Like a jingle. And we're live. Awesome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Lauren Grace here, joined by the beautiful Candice Planche, and welcome to the Light Hour. And today we are going to be doing an Oracle deck showcase where we are exploring our top 10 decks. And we're also giving you a general mini reading from each deck. So it's going to be a major show. And Candice and I are very excited to have you here. So before we get into the theme for today and how challenging it was for us to narrow down our collections of decks to 5 each, because we do 5 each, Candice, can you tell our listener at home and our viewer a little bit about yourself, my sister?
Okay, so I'm Candice Planche. I am a Reiki and Crystal Healing Master and Reiki Master teacher as well. I love learning about spirituality and just helping people on their spiritual paths. So I have a healing space in Bacchus Marsh, but I work a lot online with clients doing property readings, and negative energy property clearings and Akashic record readings as well. So you can reach me at Larimer Light Healing, and I am so excited today because I love Oracle cards. Oracles is really what got me, kind of like bridged me into trusting my intuition. So you are absolutely right, Lauren. This was a tricky subject. I feel like this is my top 5 for the minute. And
yes, okay, we'll put that disclaimer in right now because
this was changing right up until
the last minute. Well, I have a confession I have to tell you actually, but just before I go to that, I just want to quickly introduce myself for those of y'all who might not know me. My name is Lauren Grace. I'm a business and life mentor and a medium as well. And I'm the creator of Master Your Mindset, which is a 21-day challenge to a more confident you. So every day you sign on for my program, or when you sign on for my program, every day you get a new audio download from me. And essentially what I do is I take you through some tips and tricks to really help you in growing your confidence. You get a full color 50-page downloadable workbook. I take you through everything every single day. And it's really a lot about building on top of the different things that you go through the program. So if you'd like to know more about myself or about Candice as well, we've put our links to all of our stuff in the show notes and as well in the comments. So Candice, I had a really hard time with this. Like you said, I love that you threw that disclaimer out right away. You said, okay, if I'm choosing my 5 decks, it's just the 5 right now. And we're recording this on May 8th, 2024. So that means that tomorrow our decks could have been completely different. And one of the things that our listener may not realize is that you and I don't share the decks that we're going to, or the information that we're going to share on the show until we're live. I mean, I see it a little bit before though, because I have to put it into the show notes, into the producing, kind of the banners. And so I wanted to have a confession for you today. So I chose my 5 before I looked at your 5. I just want to put that out there. I chose my 5. And then I looked to your 5 and I'm like, oh, we have a double up. And I thought that's cool.
What it is too.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I was like, we have a double up. That's all right. I'll put the 2 double up, like I'll go in the order of what you did, but I'll put my double up at the same time so we can cover off that deck at once. And I'm sitting here and I'm doing it. And all of a sudden I went, oh my God, I actually forgot my favorite deck. And so the one that we had a double up, which I'm not going to share until you get there. That was a last minute one that I never even thought I was going to put into it until I saw it. And I went, oh, of course I need that one. So I swapped it out last minute and put in the deck that had to be in there in my list. So maybe I cheated. I don't know. But the deck so we don't have any double ups is what I'm trying to say. Because this other deck really had to be in it. It was a no-brainer for me. So yeah, any thoughts on that before we get started?
Well, actually, I did that last time with the books. I actually cheated knowing which authors you were going to pick, only because
you know me well.
Talk about them so much. So I was like, I can safely leave that out. With the Oracle decks, though, I did not know. And I really went with what I gravitate towards when I do want to pull, and what I thought were like ones that people needed. Like if I had to, I don't think I could get rid of any anyway, but there was one which I'm really excited to talk about later, which was like this do I put it in? And then I could not imagine not putting it in. So I'm like, what do I get rid of?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's exactly right. Also, for our listener at home, at the very end, what we're going to be doing is sharing our oldest deck and sharing our newest deck. And we're not going to do mini readings from those, but we wanted to share them because for me, I messaged Candice. I was like, I got a major case of FOMO for this. There's so many decks really. And so I kind of bought myself an extra deck because it was one of my oldest. And I felt like I had to give homage to, the OG, as they say, the OGC, the original Gangster Oracle. I don't know. All right, let's get into the show though, shall we, sister? Because we will have a lot to cover today. So why don't you kick things off with your first deck? And it is, drumroll please. There you go.
It is the Wisdom of the Oracle deck by Colette Baron-Reid. So this deck was my no-brainer deck because, and it's not that, it's like if you pick this deck, I don't know, I feel like it's like the quintessential what you would expect an Oracle deck to be. And it's not, I don't want to say it's not the prettiest deck because since I've gotten more decks, I've been like, oh my gosh, the artwork. But this deck is a deck that I go to when I need answers. So I feel like this is a real divination deck. Like other decks are like feel good. And you can, like, there's some decks that I just go to call on just a single card, and I will certainly tell you which decks they are. But this is really a deck that I feel like there's not many decks that you can specifically ask about something and get a pretty clear answer in regards to your specific topic. So generally when I tell people like, pull a card or think of your question, I generally do still say to be like, think of a situation where you want guidance for rather than a specific question. Should I do this or that? So it might be, show me the direction in my career or show me what's holding me back in my love life or whatever it is. So this deck here is just, I feel like it's one of the best decks for doing this. The guidebook is meaty and chunky. I feel like it gives you, I think this one here even gives you, so it gives you a protection message, a prosperity message, a relationship message, and then an oracle message. So it really kind of breaks it down. If you just want one deck that kind of does everything, this is a great deck. And I know that Lauren is really big into like imagery, looking at the imagery and really like reading it for yourself rather than necessarily going to the guidebook. So this is a deck that is brilliant for that. If you want to learn about imagery, if you really want to learn to be intuitive, this is a brilliant deck for that. I think this and the Enchanted Map, I don't want to mention it, but she does, Colette Baron-Reid
Colette is amazing.
She's amazing, especially with the Oracle decks and these real divination, like give me some guidance style Oracle decks. So that
was the double up deck.
This was one. I knew this was one. I figured you either had this or the Enchanted Map on your list, I figured. So I was like, I was pretty sure that. So I'm just going to do a very quick. I think if you've had Colette's, they're really thin cardstock. These ones, just so you know, they are a Hay House deck, so they're very, very reasonable. I'm going to mention the publisher for most of these because you'll get a bit of a sense as to. I don't want to say the quality of the card, but if you've got oracles, you know what a Hay House deck is going to give you. And you know what like a Blue Angel deck is going to give you as far as the information or the meatiness or even like the cardstock and stuff like that. So
or even the some books have the image of the card and they're full color. Some of them are black and white, which I always go, whoa, that's an investment, but
that's intense. Yeah, absolutely. So so especially for Hay House books are just really nice, middle of the road, affordable, and they're easy to shuffle. Sometimes I like really thick cardstock, but I do find Hay House decks are really easy to shuffle. So we got number 16, All That Glitters. So
damn, yes.
So
Can you hold it up real close, sister?
Of
Just before
course,
you
is
get.
that I need to get it in the middle of my screen. It's
Yes,
absolutely beautiful. So
that's gorgeous.
as I was saying, like Colette's cards are really great for bringing in that imagery and being able to teach yourself to, even by reading the book, but you can teach yourself to really look at the images and go, oh, and see the meaning behind it without having to go to the book all the time. It's really great for opening that up. But so this card is really, really about looking beyond the superficial. In the world today, we've just got so much that like glitters and shines, and really let's peeling back the veil as to any the facade that you might have up, or the image that you're projecting of yourself, really going within and seeing whether that is aligned to who you are and if that feels right. I'm really getting this whole the grass isn't greener. So if there is something that you're looking at stepping into and you think that it's all sparkly and it's going to bring you everything, really bring back and reflect on that, because the grass isn't always greener. Sometimes it's just slightly different grass and you still have to water it. So really, coming back to yourself and understanding that the pretty and the sparkle isn't always the essence of what you want. And yeah, don't be dazzled too much by the sparkle. Really go within and figure out whether this situation, this path is aligned with what you truly want. So
that's beautiful. And it's funny because as soon as you had that card come up, I went, ooh, and I got all dazzled by the glitter right away.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. And that card is...
Don't do that.
I pull this card all the time, and I do the same thing. I'm like, oh, every time I've pulled this card, I've been asking about something I've wanted to step into, and I felt like it's like, yes. And then every time I pull this card, and I'm like, and when I've read the meaning of this one quite a few times, and I'm like, oh, it's kind of telling me that it's not going to be so shiny. and it is, like, we do get so dazzled, and in another way, we really do put up this image of what we are, rather than letting people see who we truly are and aligning perfectly with ourselves, because we sparkle the best when we let ourselves shine through and shine true to who we are. So that is
one thing I will say, or I have a question, I guess, a thought. So when you're reading a card, I know you know the meaning of this card and you have your own interpretation. Would you also encourage somebody to go with their intuition? Like, for example, for me, I understand, what is it called? Glitters is gold on the front.
All that glitters.
All that glitters. Yes. Okay. All that glitters. So I understand the meaning of the card and the reading for our listener at home, for example, about, being aware of the sparkly things, and, everything that you said was perfect there. When you first pulled that card, I had an intuitive kind of hit for myself, which was validation, because it was abundance and gold and glitter. And so I didn't get the warning for myself. I got the validation.
Yes.
So do you find that two things can be true? Or that a card... Yeah, because sometimes I'll read a card and go, oh, whoa. Sometimes I'll read the card this way, but today I'm reading it this way. Or based on other cards it's with. Yeah. So any thoughts on that?
And I feel that, especially when you're starting out with this, especially with some decks, this deck is amazing because it has the 3 or 4 different, it's a protection, it's a this and it's a that. And if you're really looking for guidance, I find that when I'm looking for a general reading on the day to tap into my intuition, I will always go with my intuition and let my guides tell me what's going on. And usually what they're telling me is going on is aligned with what's in the book. But if I am tripping over myself looking for direction and I'm finding that I really need it, I will go to the book, because generally my ego is getting in the way of my reading. Because sometimes I find that when I go with if I'm looking for something outside of myself to give me an answer, I need to step away from my ego getting in the way and giving me the answer that it's probably been giving me for a long time. which is where I feel stuck and why I generally feel like I have to go. So
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with this deck now. So I will have the same thing and I'll be like, ooh, and then I'll be like, oh no, wait, I remember what this was. And then I'll tap into my guides and they'll be like, yeah, no, you remember.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it really comes down to how I'm feeling on the day. But if I'm reading for a client, I will usually, go with my intuitions and ask my guides and things as well. But I always encourage, if you're not familiar with your deck, then get your intuition first, write it down, and then have a little read and go,
Yeah.
see how spot on you were, and see if there was something. Take and leave what's right for you as well, because
Yeah, totally. And
not everything is going to align.
well, that's right. And that's why you have to sometimes listen to your heart voice versus your
And
ego
if you're
head,
not sure, pull a second card and see.
Yeah.
Or grab another deck and ask, for the next step of the guidance. If it's like, oh, that one just, yep, and see where you're at. Because sometimes we just need a little bit more support or a little bit more guidance
Yeah.
to, what's
And
blocking
sometimes
it.
getting one card is like not enough context as well for you to make a decision or see what's happening here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll go with the next deck. And this is the Sacred Forest deck by Denise Lynn. This is the one that it was like one of my beautiful decks. I would sometimes do, because I'm a reader as well. And I don't really use this deck to read for anyone anymore. This is a real private deck that I use for my own self, but I'll do a mini card reading today. One thing I will say as well is when you're looking to read for yourself, one tip that you could do is you could actually lay out the cards however you want to. A lot of these books have different spreads that are featured very often in the very beginning of the book. They'll give you different spreads, things that you can do. One of the things you want to keep in mind is that before you do a reading, you want to establish what position or what meaning each card in each position is going to have already. You don't kind of put them all down and then go, oh, well, that's going to be that and that's going to be that. Have that intention real clear before. So for example, past, present, future, overarching situation, the foundation card, what to do, possible outcome, things like that. And what you could do is, in fact, lay the cards out. You could record yourself giving a bit of a reading, or like Candice was saying, especially if you're new reading from the book, maybe read some of those excerpts. And then you could go back and listen to the audio a day or two later when you're not so, kind of enthralled with the reading itself. It allows you to get a little bit more perspective. So that's a cool little tip as well. So I love this deck by Denise Lynn. It's a Hay House deck as well. In the book, it just has the text written down. There's no imagery or anything like that. The cards behind them have like a Pegasus kind of background on them, which I love. And I always knock 3 times before I shuffle my deck. And that's just a clearing of the energy of the deck in case it's picked up anything. Sometimes I shuffle a few times and I just shuffle until intuitively I know to stop. Or sometimes if a card flies out, that's always the card that you're supposed to get. So today's card is Stag Spirit. This is leadership. This is card number 39. 3 plus 9 is a 12 and 1 plus 2 is a 3. 3 is all about creativity. It's also about strength. 3 through 3, 3, 3, ascended masters wanting to connect with you. And 3 could also mean pregnancy. So I love this card because this is really talking about stepping into your current position and really being the leader in your field. We've got the deer here. So deer for me, it's a stag. So you could say deer, stag, but stag would be the masculine of the deer. So it's almost like more of that yang energy going out there. Whereas when I see a soft deer or a doe, it's a lot about that feminine energy, that yin, that nurturing, that kind of like curiosity about going through the world, oh, what's over there? Whereas the stag really has that energy of getting out there and leading the pack and showing the way. So this card, as I said, is called Stag Spirit Leadership Card. So this is encouraging you at home to step out as a leader in your field. And sometimes what we have to do is we have to be brave. We have to be brave. We have to be confident. We have to be ourselves, and we have to step out there and say, you know what? Those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. I'm going to be who I am. And a big part about when we honor who we are, when we listen to our heart, we listen to our own inner guidance, is we actually allow other people around us to do the same as well. Then all of a sudden, it's like all these beautiful, bright lights are starting to shine even brighter in the world because we've stepped into our power. So showing up as a leader can be in business, it can be in personal life, it can be even just maybe making a stand, standing up for somebody. Leadership really can change depending on who we're talking to. So this is asking you to reflect in your own life, or where you might be taking a step back, or maybe taking a step forward would be better suited. Do you have this deck?
I have this deck, and I actually gifted this deck to my daughter. So I used this deck for quite a while, and she uses this deck now, which is beautiful. So
beautiful.
It's a gorgeous
I feel
deck.
this deck is, it's a lot about, this is the front cover. I think I showed it, but I can't remember now. It's a lot about, I feel, earthiness, material, businessy, but also a lot about wisdom and tapping into nature and groundedness. There's a real grounded vibe to it, I feel. So yeah, I really enjoy this beautiful deck. It's my little special deck. All right, next.
Okay, next one is probably one that you haven't seen.
That's correct.
Yeah, the Wandering Soul Oracle by Rachel Dean. Rachel
Gorgeous.
Dean from Moonhouse Studio. Now, this is a self-published, so it's like an indie oracle deck. Beautiful Rachel. She is an artist from Geelong in Victoria. And she does like the imagery of this deck. So this is a real, like, I mean, the outside is like gilded. It's got this beautiful holographic,
that rainbow,
like silver rainbow. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's silver. Yeah, it's silver rainbow. It's absolutely incredible.
Beautiful.
The deck is beautiful. She hand draws everything.
Oh wow, I love that.
I fell in love with this deck just from like her drawing style. So beautiful. This is a real starseed kind of vibey deck. So it's a deck that if you love oracle cards and you like something, I don't want to say a little bit darker, but it's a little bit shadowy, I suppose. It's really like kind of diving deep. Definitely when you start with this, like, I mean, I find it's very hard initially to, I guess, get a reading on this without getting to know the guidebook. The guidebook is very small. My only downfall with the guidebook is that it's not alphabetized and there's no index page. So you kind of have to. This was her first, like, I think this was one of her first. She did the tarot deck initially, which is stunning as well. And this very sad about this deck, though, or the tarot deck that she first did, was that she's actually had to discontinue the tarot deck. I think you can get a few. She still has a few in stock, but it basically got plagiarized or pirated, and people were printing it and then selling it really, really cheap. So she actually had to discontinue the deck, which is I think this is happening a lot with oracle cards. So please, oracle and tarot, please buy your decks from reputable places.
And it took me a minute to figure that out, because sometimes you're like, oh, it's only $8, and you're on eBay and you think it's like a great deal, and then you get it and you go, oh, this is not at all what I thought it was going to be.
And it breaks my heart because, I mean, I know Rachel personally, and I know that she poured her entire world into these decks. And so to have, for any artist or any person to have their work stolen like that is just devastating. And to save a few bucks is just not fair. So please, buy your stuff from a reputable place. So I'm going to do a quick reading on this one. And this deck, it shuffles beautifully. It's just got this beautiful crisp sound. And so the card we got is See Beyond, which I think follows up perfectly from the last card we pulled.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
tapping into your intuition, looking at situations that you're maybe feeling a little bit stuck on, and seeing beyond what is initially being shown to you from the universe. So really discerning the difference between, that grass is greener mentality and truly what you want at your core. And so see beyond what you physically see. There's a real push with this to connect in with your higher self, with your guides, with your ancestors. So really, tapping in, there's the kind of third eye going on. So really, if you are drawn to this card, it's really asking you to just take that time, really connect in, and feel into the energy that is around you, and trust in your intuition rather than being taken back by everything in the outside world, which has that beautiful veil over it. So I absolutely love this deck. It's beautiful.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that one. I love seeing new decks, especially when you write down, you're like, oh, that's next on my list, to get. Okay. My next deck is Queen of the Moon Oracle. And Candice, you were talking about sometimes we do want darker decks that are a little bit, I like to say moodier, more intuitive, more yin, a little bit more shadow revealing, more of that kind of part of us that we sometimes maybe keep a little bit under wraps. So I feel the Queen of the Moon Oracle is exactly that. So that's this beautiful cover here by Stacey DeMarco. I'm sure you have this deck.
I do. Yeah, definitely do.
Yes. And I love the back of it. It's got the different moon cycles here in like a blue. It's a high quality deck. Again, this one is from Rockpool Publishing. And the book is amazing in terms of the fact that it's color. Like, so you actually have a photo of the card, and then you've got a color image of that. I will say, I think you agree with me on this. I don't love the descriptions in the deck as much as I love the images of the deck. So one of the reasons why I chose this deck is because it's one that I pretty much read all my cards intuitively anyway, but I read this one intuitively big time, because I feel that the descriptions in the book are a little bit more static, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like they talk about the element. It's almost more clinical. That's kind of how it reads. Do you think so?
Absolutely. Yes. I've got a few decks that are like that. And it's like, I don't need, because especially once you've read through the Oracle deck or you've read through the description ones, it's like, I don't need to read again, elementally where this comes from, or, it.
Yeah.
I want the meaning, the Oracle meaning, the guide. Yeah, for sure.
How about the magic behind it? A little bit more. Yeah. So, but one of the things that I love about Oracle decks is to each their own. There's always like, some people might want more of a clinical description, and that's awesome. For me, I get really wrapped up in the imagery, like Candice mentioned earlier, and looking at the cards in that way. So that really connects to me. Okay. So I'll pull a card from this one. And this card is the Path, and this is card number 8. And we can see here, there is this woman. Sorry, how should I, there we go. It's awkward with the camera. You're always like, where am I going? So there's this woman, and she's standing at the bottom of a staircase, and the staircase is leading up to, it looks like a grassy area with some clouds coming through. She's in a kind of a magical world with a lot of rocks and stars. And it says the Path on it, waxing crescent number 6, but then the card itself is number 8. 8 for me is full circle. It's also the infinity symbol. So it's like what goes around comes around. Sometimes when we have an 8 as well, it's a big time for us to really reflect on where we want to go next. It can reflect the end of a cycle, even though it's not a 9 or like a 10, but it's almost like full circle. So everything is kind of where it is at the moment. I also like to look at 8s as going, what we put out comes back to us. So it's almost like a karmic card as well. So this woman is standing at the bottom of a ladder. She's got her hands behind her back, and she seems to be in a reflective state. So she's kind of wondering, do I want to go up this ladder into this new sort of domain, or do I want to continue and stay where I am? So this card is a lot about who is it that you want to be, and are you taking steps to take you into that direction now, or are you taking steps and making decisions that take you away from it? One of the things that I know for sure is that when we really tune into our own heart and our own inner guidance, when we get those feelings of joy, those feelings of ease, those feelings of peace, that's very often a yes. When we have trepidation or anxiety or a little bit of maybe something's like there's like a resistance that's kind of happening there, that's very often an opportunity for us to kind of sit back and reflect, get more information, pivot, or even it's a no. So for me, I always make an effort that when I'm feeling high vibe, when I'm feeling excited, when I'm feeling good, to always be really clear about my intention and put that out into the universe. And anytime I'm not feeling that way is to take that step back, take that moment of reflection and introspection. And this card really looks like this woman is doing that. She's taking a minute and she's going, you know what? I understand that I don't have to make all of my decisions right now. So it's possible I'm going to receive a little bit more information. Maybe I'm going to look and reflect on what I've done to lead me up to this point now. And if I want more of that, to keep doing similar stuff, versus if I'm ready for a change, to maybe change the scenery. So yeah, that's number 8.
Beautiful. I love those cards. I love the imagery in those cards. Yeah. If you're going to, intuitively read, they're amazing cards for that, for sure.
Agreed.
So my next deck is the Priestess of the Light Oracle by Sandra Ann Taylor and Kimberly Weber. So this is a beautiful deck, gorgeous deck, great for, it's got, the imagery is beautiful and stunning, rather hard to intuitively read, but gorgeous, gorgeous. Can you see that? Just gorgeous imagery, beautiful colorings. You do need to, when you are reading these cards, if you are trying to do it intuitively, you really do need to read into the meanings down the bottom, right? If you're not going to go into the guidebook. I've used this deck quite a bit, so I'm reasonably familiar with most of these cards, but so each card will have its main card name. It is numbered, which is really, really nice as well. But just beautiful decks, great card stock. These are a Hay House deck, so very, very affordable. And these are a great deck as well. They do have a very feminine energy to them. They are beautiful at getting you to reflect, but they're also beautiful for, I wouldn't say they're as great at giving you the answers as, say, a Colette Baron Reid deck, but it definitely will nudge you in the right direction for guidance. So I guess it depends. Like if you are wanting direct answers, you should probably go to tarot. But if you're wanting direct answers, there are certain decks that are probably the top tier of being pretty direct with answers. These sort of sit nicely in the middle. They give you a nice amount of direction, but also give you enough to kind of just find your way as well. I don't love any deck that, I guess, takes your power away and kind of tells you a bit too firmly what you need to do. Isn't that terrible?
Sometimes I feel like that with tarot, where I go, well, that's a little bit extreme or intense. I'm like, I don't know.
I don't work a lot with tarot, but I do know that for some people, they want that far more clear. There's like, this is the way it's read and there's nothing else. Oracle is gives you far more flexibility, doesn't it? So beautiful. Yeah. So let's see where we're at. Beautiful. So we have got number 17 and Sacred Action. Decisive focus. So the imagery of this is gorgeous. It's got the cheetah on top of this beautiful almost warrior woman's head with the moon around it. This card is really asking you to take the time to reflect on any situations that, I guess, like, I'm feeling that you've put on hold, and it's really about coming in and releasing that self-doubt, to take that cheetah spirit and to step forward into your power and start moving towards taking decisive action towards those goals, and stop selling yourself short and sitting in that fear, stepping past that doubt, coming forward and really reflecting on what things you have put aside, and those plans that you're just kind of like shelving, that you were really excited about, but maybe you're shelving now. So start to bring them back into the light and shift through that self-doubt, because now is a really beautiful time to step forward, to call on that energy, and to just step forward and to start making action towards it.
That's beautiful. Hopefully your listener at home is not trying to add up all of our mini readings into one giant reading for themselves, because that would be confusing. So depending on where you are listening to this,
I really think the best way to look at these readings is if there is a deck that goes, wow.
Yes.
And you're really drawn to that specific deck, or a card comes out and you go, oh, look at that card, or we say what the card is and you go, yeah, that's bang on to where I'm feeling right now, then please take that, because you'll get a little, although all of my cards seem kind of aligned, so maybe it's like a one.
It may work, but also all the glitters and then stepping into your power, it's like, maybe take small steps. If you're looking at the whole thing, but I love that piece of advice as well. Or maybe, before we start talking about the next deck, you could say, all right, I'm going to look for the guidance or the one hidden meaning. One of the things that's really cool is sometimes, and you could in a way parcel everything together, would be that if you take one nugget of wisdom from each one, that may ring true to you, because we're doing just general readings. So one of the things that's very cool about that is that we may say the odd thing, which is exactly what you need to hear, and you can almost disregard the rest of that mini reading for that card, for example.
And it also gives you a sense of what the deck is like. So if you're like, oh, I kind of like that deck, and you can actually go out and and grab it if you want to, or
yes, perfect. And that deck looks absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. Reputable seller. Yes. Reputable seller. By the way, when you don't buy from a reputable seller, the card quality is crap. It is not at all the same. It is not at all like what you want. You want the real, big decks and the energy behind them and that heavy card stock and that full color.
Yeah.
Okay. Just before we get into my next deck, I thought we should maybe talk about the subject of how to choose your oracle deck. So Candice, when you're choosing your oracle deck, how do you pick one? Do you kind of let it pick you? Do you do what you just sort of mentioned there, where you maybe gravitate to someone doing a reading and go, oh, I really need that deck?
It's funny. I used to buy every deck I possibly could. That's how I used to pick my decks. I was like, but now I don't feel like I don't use oracle decks like I used to. I used to use oracle decks a lot when I really didn't trust my own intuition, and I really wasn't connecting into my guides. And I didn't have, I felt like I almost like I needed confirmation when I was, so now I will only buy a deck when it really resonates. Like, I'll either go in somewhere and I'll be like, ooh, and I'll pick it up and it'll just call me. Or the artwork. So now when I buy a deck, it needs to be kind of special and unique. And there's one coming up, which just is the epiphany of all of that. And it's not even necessarily, because oracle decks are all different themes and stuff, which is why I love oracle. And I think I really sit with where I'm at the time. And if the I guess the theme of the deck, if it's, animal or animal spirit or whatever the underlying tone of the deck, if that resonates and the artistry is really, really pretty. It also helps if it's got a nice guidebook though. I do love a good guidebook when I'm first connecting, because just did set the tone.
Yeah, it's always nice to see what the author originally intended the card to be about, and then over time you make it your own.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I've worked with an oracle deck before and done it all completely intuitively. And I was like, oh, I love this deck. And then when I opened up, like a few months later, I'm like, I'm just going to see. I was like, I did not resonate at all with anything the author is saying. And I was like, oh, maybe I think I got what I needed from the deck, and I don't use that deck anymore, funnily enough. But I like to know what the intention of the author was when it goes in, because their energy does sit in that deck. And if the intention's not there, then you're not going to get the same results or the same flow as you would if you really resonate with actually the intentions of the author as well.
That being said, I don't read a lot of the guidebooks of the decks. I
know you don't. I love that though.
So I like go with, because I believe that the decks are spirit's way of communicating with us, which they are. And so when we're reading, sometimes I can get caught up in the author's interpretation, whereas I got my message as soon as I saw it. I got that number, or I got that color validation, or I got that gold abundance, tick, So sometimes that also is truthful. The cool thing, though, is that when you have two different perspectives, like you and I, we still have common grounds in a lot of ways. And at the same time, you have to find your own journey within that. There will be some cards and some decks, like one later I'm going to share, where I would not interpret this at all intuitively. I go to the book right away. I have no qualms about that. And it's a personal deck that I use, because I'm not going to sit and do a reading for someone and read from the book, although today I will. So it's kind of like it's not always that easy, is it? Or it's not always that black and white, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think it's important to mention that if you go in with a deck with the intention of reading it intuitively, then you're going to get what you need from it. If you go into the deck intending to read from the book, then you were going to pull the correct card to get the right answer. So if I was going in and I was doing a reading for someone and I'm like, oh, I'm going to check on the book, then then the cards that I pull will match with what I need from the guidebook. If I'm going in like just intuitively and going, then the right cards are going to come out, because the cards are going to come out that sit with my imagery, that makes sense to me, so that I can deliver the message that you need. Does that make sense? Have I explained that right?
Yeah.
And so that's how you would work. Whereas either your guides are working through the divination cards or the oracle cards to give you the messages that you need. And that's how all oracle cards work. And that's why you need to make sure that a deck makes you want to grab it. Resonates, makes you feel good, talks to you in a way that goes, yes, this is a pretty deck, or this is a deck that makes me feel good. So
when I choose my deck, that's what I do as well. I look at the art. I see whether or not it gravitates to me through the art, basically. And then when you're lucky enough to connect with the author as well, like Colette Byrne-Reed or Denise Lynn, these beautiful writers, and it's a bonus. But because I read intuitively, the guidebook isn't always my, although you never know until you're opening the deck anyway, what the guidebook's going to say. They don't give you previews of that usually. So,
and there are a lot of decks, some of the really pretty decks. So if you are going to be reading intuitively, then definitely, have a look. Usually on the back, sometimes there's pictures of the pictures. So please have a look and see whether it's a deck that has enough imagery in it to read intuitively. Because I've grabbed decks before and gone, like you said, it's like, they're all one color, or they all have a very similar imagery going on, or unless you know exactly specifically what that goddess has going on, then you might struggle a little bit, especially if you're starting out. So
okay, next deck is, you called it earlier, the Enchanted Map Oracle. Yes, I use this one. I love this one. I use this with clients a lot because it's a journeying deck. And I feel that when people are wanting a reading, they're very at an impasse in their life. They're looking for some direction about the next step to take. Usually that's what we're pulling these cards for, isn't it? It's when we're wanting that confirmation, we're wanting that validation, we're wanting that outside support to help us make a decision. I love Colette Byrne-Reed. We've talked about her already. This deck itself, I just find it really beautiful. I've used it for many years now. The deck in the guidebook itself has like an upright and a reverse meaning, and also no images. It's just black and white, but it's, got a nice thorough summary of what the cards are. But again, I read intuitively, so I don't read them all every time. When I'm reading for myself, sorry?
These are great cards for intuitive reading as well, though.
Yes. When I'm reading for myself, what I do is I'll lay the cards, I'll intuitively read, and then sometimes I'll read the guidebook for just some of that extra. But when I'm reading for a client or a person, I don't read the book, obviously. I just go with what I'm meant to say. Yeah. So let me choose one card here. And the edges are getting all, worn. And yeah, I think that's a sign of a good deck, that you've been using it for a while. Okay. This is a beautiful card. I love this card. This is the Spark card. And this is card number 34, and 3 + 4 is a 7. And you can see here, this woman is playing, my camera is just taking a minute to focus there, but she's playing the violin, and it's all these love hearts that are coming out of the violin. This is really a lot about sparks of creativity. When we have a 7 as well, 7 is the crown chakra associated with the color purple as well. It's connected to your spirit. It's a higher vibe number. It's all about connecting to source, connecting to spirit, connecting to our inner purpose. This card here, there's a lot of movement within this card. This woman is playing violin. She's bringing out music, creativity, and feeling. She's really tuning into herself. And anybody who's ever made music, when they tap into that part of themselves and free themselves from that, there's like this other worldly thing that sort of happens where you just really step into all of this emotion and power that you didn't always know was there, and you just feel into the music. When we get this Spark card, this is a lot about encouraging you to look for where you can bring in some more creativity and sparks of energy and maybe new ideas into your own life. Because we have the reference to 7 and your higher self, as well as your connection to source and your purpose here, this isn't asking you to, worry too much about it. It's just saying, hey, what makes you feel good? What sparks this light within you? What sparks that creativity within you? And you can do anything and find that spark of creativity with you, that little bit of magic, that little bit of light. So for example, I'm sitting here at my desk. I've got a little bit of lavender cordial in my water. So I'm drinking that for a little bit of creativity. I love my lavender. I've got candles going to add a little bit of that magic and that, that mystery into my day. So sparks of energy and sparks of creativity can really show up in a variety of ways. You don't have to overthink it. Okay. Now, the thing that's really cool about this card, I get that they're asking me to remind you, is that when we are connected with something that is really resonating with our heart and our soul, that's when we start to really fully realign ourselves or become even more in alignment with source energy. So that's why when we see her playing the violin, when we've got those references of those hearts, it's because she's playing from her heart, and all there is love. And so it's about tapping into that feeling of love, and it's about running with that. Yes, I love that card.
It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I love that deck. That's a great deck.
Yes, I love that deck. Yes. Okay, next one. And I have this deck, I will say, and I love this deck as well.
Water Temple Oracle by Susie Cherry. Beautiful deck. This is a beautiful deck. I do love Susie's decks. I also have, what is it called? The Star Temple Star something Oracle. Gorgeous. If you've not seen that one, that's got some great images in it. I think I've mentioned it previously. Yeah, so I use this deck quite a bit. Not always easy for intuition, for following your intuition. However, there's always, this actually has a goddess of some sort, usually.
Exactly. Sure. That's why it is, because I'm not familiar with all the goddesses. So
yeah,
I don't always use this with a client either.
Yeah. This is one that initially, especially until you've used it a lot, and then you start to gather the a bit more intuitively. But they always they'll have like a little affirmation with it as well. The guidebook is pretty good as well. So definitely it's quite it's a Blue Angel deck. So Blue Angel decks are always a little bit thicker. Beautiful cardstock, great boxes, great guidebooks. So the card that we got here, I love the imagery, and I love that now we're bringing in more diverse imagery for So this is number 40,
Or-
underwater temple growth. I consciously
Mm.
change and evolve. Beautiful. So
Wow.
this
Talk about fertility too.
yeah, it's so
Abundance and like
this card for me is really about like I'm being called to mention tapping into like your uncomfortable truths, really going within. And I love that. See, it's so funny that you got that abundance, you got that fertility from this card. This is what is so interesting about intuitively reading cards. But this card is really it you know, the words are growth. I consciously change and evolve. So it's really about going within, going deep and looking for the barriers, the blockages that you've placed up to block your own path. And really, by going deep and becoming conscious and understanding, one, why you put these blocks up, and accepting them in a way, then you can evolve and change. And consciousness, and understanding yourself and doing a little bit of that shadow work is just so powerful for moving forward and creating change. And, you know, you've got the fertility there. So the more you go deep and go within, then you're going to be able to spark that change forward and bring that forward for yourself. So
beautiful. It's a beautiful reading. Okay, next one. We'll actually have another question I thought we could talk about before we go to the next deck, which is how to clear your oracle deck. So I talked earlier about how when I have an oracle deck, I'll knock 3 times on it. I also have here a selenite slab. So I keep, it's a crystal, yes, and Candice is the crystal expert here, but I have a selenite slab, which is a self-cleansing crystal, and I keep my decks, the ones that I'm currently working with, I normally keep on there to just kind of keep charged and clear all the time. I also use sage, sound theory, sound healing, things like that. What about you? What do you use to clear your decks?
So I actually do. If someone else has touched my deck, I use the knocking. So I knock 3 times to clear the deck. If it's
I don't like people touching my decks.
See, I'm okay. See, I'm not, even my crystals and stuff, I'm okay with everybody. I just clear the energy. Yeah. So I do the knocking if I'm in a hurry. I always just set an intention to clear the deck off. I use Reiki. I call on source energy and bring it through. If you're new to clearing decks, then I love just Palo Santo or using a sound bowl. I've actually, you know, at one stage I was like literally like blowing down the decks with intention to clear off the energy. If you've got the intention of clearing off your deck, then you will be able to do it with whatever. So whether it's your Palo Santo or whatever. I love Palo because it actually leaves the cards smelling a bit nice.
Beautiful.
But when I'm reading for myself, unless my energy feels quite blocked, I don't necessarily cleanse them all the time. I don't feel you need to. I know other people do. If I'm going to be pulling a card or doing a reading for someone else, then I definitely will always do that. That's just the way I best practice. But when you're doing it for yourself, definitely cleanse it when you get it. Sometimes some of them actually will have like an invocation or a little mini ritual that you can do at the start. They're usually in the start of the decks as to like something that you can read to set the intention of the deck and clear off the energy. So that's sometimes a really nice one to do when you first get it. But I always recommend like just spending a bit of time, like when you get an oracle deck, spend 10 minutes, like look at every card, touch every card, like, you know, separate them all, lay them out, you know, just touch them, connect with them. It's a beautiful, beautiful way of clearing that energy as well.
I was going to have us talk about the best way to get to know your deck in a little while, but we can talk about it now, Candice.
Oh, I messed up the flow. I love it.
No, it's about going with the flow when
Going
things
with the
naturally
flow.
happen. So when you get a deck, do you read the ritual and then you start to go through? Because I don't normally read the ritual. I just like look at every single card, touch it, look at it. I don't always read the guidebooks. Sometimes I do, but usually I really just look because I'm an intuitive reader. That would be why. So yeah.
Well, I got a Rebecca Campbell deck, and in one of the so in most of her decks, she usually has like an invocation card, like an intention setting card in the deck. And that's what actually made me think, oh, and I was having a look and I found that quite a few decks actually have it in the front. If I remember, I will usually read through it. I don't always do it, honestly. But if there's a deck that I really, so there's some decks that when you get them, they feel like they need to, something special needs to happen with them, I suppose. So I definitely will read that start thing. Or if I feel like I just don't quite know the energy of the deck, then I will definitely read through some of it. I don't read the guidebook front to back at all. And I'll usually, I feel like the best way of getting to know a deck is yes, looking at all the cards initially, and then pulling a card every day, just doing, a 1 or 2 card reading every single day and just spending that time. Sadly, it takes a lot of time to connect with decks, and some a lot more than others. I mean, some, it can take a while.
Yeah, which is okay. It's about the journey, but when you're new, be patient with yourself for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
And
read the guidebook. That's a good way to start.
yeah. Yeah. And there's some, like, definitely quite a few of, when I was picking the decks that I wanted to use, I wanted to make sure that there were quite a few beginner decks in there, like beginner decks that I would still use now, because they are very, very clear. Like, their guidebooks are pretty clear. They're not these massive, chunky, insanely hard to understand things with rituals and all these sorts of things. Like, they're just nice and easy to get into. Because when you get a deck, you want to connect with it quickly. You want to start getting the messages and start getting the answers that there's a reason you bought that deck. So you do want to be able to connect with it and feel like you're getting something out of it pretty much the first time you read from it. So
yeah. And one thing you can do as well, sleep with your deck. I remember I learned that like over 20 years ago. Put it under your pillow or like beside you when you're sleeping for the first few times. Carry it around with you, that kind of thing. We will talk a little bit later about how to store your decks safely, properly, or the way that we do it. There's no incorrect way. And so speaking of hard and easy decks, this is a hard deck. I'm going to share it. Now, I will say sometimes I'm feeling around here in the producer studio, sending you a little message or, setting things up for the next little thing. But one thing I will say is that I had to swap out one while we were live here because I realized I had a tarot deck. So I swapped it out because you said something about tarot and then oracle. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's a tarot deck. So I swapped it out for an oracle deck, which is cool. I'm all right with it. This is a fairy oracle deck. I really wanted the fairies to be in this because I have a lot of fairy decks and they didn't make the cut. And so when I got rid of that tarot deck, well, maybe for another rainy day, I was able to bring this one in. So when I went to Tokyo, I went to the Tarot Museum, which is amazing, by the way, highly recommend it. And they had some oracle there as well. And this was one of the decks. So it's a very thin, not tons of cards, very thin. The back of it are like these cherub fairies, angels, but fairies at the back. The deck itself, the creators are Arthur Rackman and Jamie Elford. And, I better put the correct little thing on there. The whole book is written in tons of languages. So it's so many different languages. And I think let me just see here. The first 30-ish, the first 29 pages are in English, and that's it in the whole book. That's all different languages. This is a challenging deck to read. I would say I would not recommend it if you are an intuitive reader and you're new. Probably not. I do now still look I'll look at it intuitively and then I'll read what it says in the guidebook, just because this is a deck I don't share with other people. It's my own personal deck. Again, I've got a couple of those I've shared today. Yeah, so I'll pull a card now and we'll see what we get. These cards are also a little bit darker, a little bit moodier, a little bit, but when I saw them, I just absolutely fell in love. It was just such a beautiful deck and so much feeling within it. So here's one of the beautiful cards. So you can see that. So there's no word. Oh man, I feel like sometimes with this camera, I'm not doing a very good job at showing you the card. So you can see there's these beautiful little fairies and they're walking along the path and there's not a lot of indication. So a lot of the cards that we have a word on it or a positioning statement or something to kind of guide the reading a little bit. This doesn't have that. So it's just got these, you know, these little fairies and they're walking. There's one that's marching with a flower in their hand, as you can see here, almost like a follow me, follow the leader. We also see number 5 here. So 5 is a lot about change. 5 is also, when I get a 5, it's also about middle of the road and also foundations. Because it's the middle of a journey of 5 is about making sure we're doing things like eating well, exercising enough. We're surrounding ourselves by positive influences. We're taking care of our environment. We're decluttering. We're doing things to really support ourselves to have the best, you know, outcome as possible. When we see this card here, we can see that there's like a group of people and they're all walking together, but there's a clear leader, but somebody else is showing the people behind the way. And what's really interesting about this card is we've got a leader and then we've got somebody showing them the way. There's 2 different people there. The leader is not holding that baton. One of the other characters is, which often shows us that sometimes we have a right or a left hand man or woman or person that's really assisting us in our journey, because leaders aren't always doing everything on their own. I get that. And one of the things that our team wants you to remember, or your team wants you to remember, is that asking for help is essential. Because when you are the leader and you are stepping forward and you are moving about and you're, you know, wanting to create change in your life, it can be a lonely place. It can also sometimes feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders and you're doing everything and all these people are following you and you're like, come on, I'll show you the way. But we need to remember that source is there to help us. Our angels, our spirit guides are there to assist us along our journey. So this card for me is a lot about celebration. It's a lot about community. It's a lot about bringing us all together and getting ready for the journey ahead. And it's a lot about, as well, when we surround ourselves by like-minded people, we're going to get further along. We're going to get people that are cheering us on, that when we're having difficult days, we can really count on, you know, people that are in your corner and that are supporting you. So yeah, that's this card. Some of the other images are just like, I'll just show you a couple of the other pieces of art because I thought, Candice, you might like them. Have you ever seen this deck?
I've never seen this deck, no.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. But you can see there's a bit of, you know, just like, look at that. How stunning is that? There's just so much beauty. When I saw this deck, my mouth nearly hit the floor. I was just like thinking, this is needs to come home with me. Okay, your turn.
Well, that's actually a perfect segue into the deck that I've chosen next. So this deck is, I could not leave this out. So this is a deck called Into the Lonely Woods by Lucy.
I have this deck.
Cavendish. Isn't it insane? Now, it's not a deck I pull on all the time, but so this deck was released during the pandemic, and I feel like this was just the perfect deck for that time. It is dark, not in a really sad way. Oh gosh, it's so hard to explain this deck.
Loneliness is a shared emotion at times, you know.
It's really like, I mean, this is the back, and it's just, they're these beautiful like satin finish cards. The imagery in these cards is, make sure I get it in the center, is just insane. Like the pictures are so gorgeous. Everything about it makes me both sad and sorrowful and uplifted at the same time. So this deck really is, I feel like it's it's all about solitude and isolation. It's a deck literally, centered around that, which makes perfect sense for when it came out. Like, I'm sure she was working on this well before we went through what we all went through, but it just came like divinely at the perfect time. And it's definitely shadow work. But if you're in a bit of a slump, or you're feeling a bit isolated, even if you're surrounded by people, we can all feel really, really isolated. This is a beautiful deck just to uplift and support you. It's just a deck that I couldn't go past. It's not one I pull from very, very often because I just don't sit in that place. But anytime I do pull from it, just because I walk past it and I go, "You're so beautiful," I have to pull a card from you. It still resonates in a way because it sits with, I guess it just sits with the spiritual path. It's lonely. It can feel really lonely. It can feel like you're the only person going through what you're going through or awakening. So let's pull a little card from.
And also, when you're pulling a card and where you're like getting guidance from spirit, we're not always feeling excited and joyful. Sometimes we're feeling confused or lost, and maybe we don't want an uplifting deck that's going to be like, "You go, girl, you got this." Maybe we need something that's going to be a little bit more sensitive to our emotions and the harder times, but reframe it in a way that allows us to feel that empowerment and reconnect with the opportunity, especially in that shade. Yeah.
And to see that other side, because I find there's a lot of shadow decks out there that are that dark, slightly darker, that sort of that opposite side of not all sunshines, rainbows, and fairies. Because oracle decks are generally quite uplifting. That's, they don't generally tell you too much negativity. They can give you a bit of caution, but mostly they're not. And yeah, you're right. You don't always want to, flick it over and see all this happy stuff.
Yeah.
This deck doesn't, I feel like it's a beautiful way to support you and make you feel like it's okay to feel how you're feeling without making you dive deeper into the stuff, right? Because some of the shadow decks that you kind of look at and you go, "Oh yeah, I'll grab that," it basically just makes you dig a deeper hole because it's wanting you to self-investigate. This deck doesn't do that. It's uplifting in a way that makes you go, "But hold on, I don't want to be uplifted too much. I'm really happy in my hole." Like,
feel bad for me.
Exactly. It supports you in that feeling and gently lifts you to make you feel, it's a really beautiful, interesting deck. And anyone who has it will probably feel the same way. It's really hard to describe, but so this is just perfect because this is exactly what I was talking about. So this card is number 9, and it is "There are others like you," and there are these beautiful, if you're not watching the video,
oh my God, it's so gorgeous. You have to go watch the video.
You have to watch the video because you can't even describe it. These beautiful, gorgeous, like sad creatures are just looking up at this beautiful bird. And this card is really about understanding that as you awaken, it feels exceptionally isolating. It can feel like you're waking up and you're almost losing everything and everyone around you. And that's not true. That's not actually what happens. But as you do awaken, things start to drop away. So it can feel like really, really isolating. And your path is so unique. You feel like you're the only person going through it. And to be honest with you, you are, because everybody's awakening journey, everybody's journey to whether it's enlightenment or the next step is so unique and beautiful. And so you are the only one that has gone through what you have gone through, and you should honor that. But there are other people feeling the way you're feeling, and there are so many others out there that are also awakening. And it's about not feeling alone, even though it is a solitary path. Awakening can be very, very solitary. But you are not alone. There are others. There are so many others. You know, we're here. But we generally do. Lauren, you probably feel the same. Like you kind of, there are such huge parts of the awakening journey that have to be done by yourself, or that do get done by yourself. And that is part of the process, because you have to go within to understand and accept yourself. And you have to get really, really comfortable with the uncomfortableness of yourself and love yourself on a level that doesn't seem right. And when you do, you can just, you can light the path for others, and you can, it's a beautiful path. But yes, it can be very, very lonely. And this deck is just, was just the timing of this deck and the images. Like, I could look at this all day. I don't pull from it very often because it just doesn't, But every time I look at these cards, I just go, oh, I could never part with this deck. It's just stunning.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that deck into it. And when I saw that card, the word that came to me was hope. And I think that because they were looking up at the bird, there was like, oh, there's something to look forward to, or there's something, outside of myself in a way as well.
Very beautiful. Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you store your decks? You talked about how that's going to be a deck that you never get rid of. How do you keep your decks? Do you keep them in their boxes? Do you have any in like a cloth, or what do you do?
I keep them all in their boxes, and they all sit in my healing space. Most of them sit in my healing space up on a shelf, where they're always visible for me to like grab. I am more than happy. I know that a lot of people don't like people touching their decks. I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine with people touching my deck. That's not a problem. Even my crystals, unless they're fragile. I feel like the energy of decks and stuff is beautiful to be shared. So I don't mind having them all out where people can grab them and stuff, because I can just cleanse them and they're mine for the not for now, but it's all transient. So
yes, that's very cool. And I keep my decks. I've got some, when I'm pulling a deck, I always pull it on like a mat like this. I've got this beautiful mat my mom made me. I'll pull it on a mat. Sometimes if I'm reading for myself, I'll just, do a card or two on my table, because my table's clean. I'm not worried about that. But I like the kind of the ritual part of having a mat that they go on. So when I'm traveling, I will keep my decks. I'm sure you can relate to this, Candice, but it depends where I'm going in the world. But I pretty much always need to have at least one deck with me. Very often it'll be like the enchanted map or something, or the wisdom or something like that, although that's a huge deck to take. If I'm driving somewhere, I sometimes need 4 or 5 decks, because you just never know what's going to happen, or if I'm going to go live and I need, to pull from different ones. That doesn't even include the books that I also need to bring in case I'm going to read, them. I need 5 or 6 choices. But anyway, and then I also have some beautiful bags, that I've got from the Quirky Cup Collective. My girlfriend, Elsie Lake, has given me a couple of these. So sometimes when we have like a beautiful little bag that we can put kind of maybe our signature deck in, or the one we're working with a lot. And then like you, I keep mine in the boxes as well. Sometimes though, I used to, I can't remember right now what deck it was. I think it's a Radley Valentine Angel Tarot card deck. I think it is, but I used to keep that in a scarf wrapped up, and I would have that one a bit separate. So yeah, there's no wrong way to do it. You just want to make sure that, they're safe and not going to be damaged in any way by some random thing. I don't know what would damage it.
I like having them out as well. Like, I do think they.
Me too. Yeah.
You'll use them more if they're out and about. They don't need to be used all the time if you're not, they shouldn't be an obligation. It should always be when you're ready to use it, or you just want to connect. So
yeah. And my last one is, I will say, if I had to choose one deck and you said, girl, you're only allowed one deck, it would be this deck, the Earth Warriors Oracle deck. It's by Alana Fairchild. Do you know this deck?
I do know it. I don't have it. I have a lot of Alana's decks, but
yeah, this one is extraordinary. And it is the one that I was alluding to earlier that I do not interpret. I mean, you can look at it and interpret some of the things, but the book is so, and a lot of Alana's books are like this, it's so full, and each deck has like 2 to 3 pages of content. So sometimes if I'm, going to send my girlfriend like a card, I might pull this one because there's a healing process in it. It talks to you about the person or the goddess or the character who's like on the card and a bit of their history. She's such a beautiful writer. It is just such an extraordinarily beautiful deck. So what I'll do is I'll pull a card now and I'll just read a really small excerpt from the book because, as I said earlier, this is not a book. This is not a deck that I interpret on my own. Frankly, because there's too much to miss. That's what I feel. Yeah. There's just too much going on. So
yeah,
Alana's
decks are an event. They're an
Go
event.
Ahead, sorry, hon.
Alana's decks are really an event. You have to have the time, and you've got to, they're not light decks.
No, they're not. Exactly. I don't use this every day. This isn't a daily deck. This is like a deck. I'll pull a card every fortnight or something like that to just get a little bit of that wisdom. And the artwork is by Isabel Bryna, and she is amazing. And this card is like pretty much absolutely incredible. Look at this.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, who wants an original art piece of that? Me, I do. So it says it's number 17, which becomes an 8, but Padma Sundari. And it said, out of darkness, light is born. And this art, like, look at the complexities of, the heart and the color and the vibrancy. This card is like, wow. Okay. So when I go into the book, like, as I said, I'll just read one little snippet of it because we're not going to sit here for me to read the whole thing. But this is a deck that I highly recommend everyone get. Okay. So it says, out of darkness, the light is born. The light is powerful enough to survive exposure to the darker side of humanity and remain pure, empowered, and effective. Trust in your spiritual purpose as a light in the world. Trust particularly in your ability to bring purity, order, grace, and light to disorder, chaos, and destruction. The divine is ever by your side and ever within your heart, assisting you with this brighter purpose in all ways. And then it talks about this card showing up in a reading. It talks about the spiritual guidance, and then it also does a healing process. Then it has a prayer as well that you do to invoke that healing process. So it's really just such a magical deck. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you ever do a full spread with Alana's cards, you will be there for almost a week. But
yeah. I only ever do a one card piece because that's exactly right.
Definitely a one carder. Like, otherwise it's a lot.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Okay, and now we're going to get into our oldest decks as well as what to do with your older deck when you're done with it. And then we'll end with our newest decks and let you know what we've got coming up for our next show. So Candice, your oldest deck.
My oldest deck is actually, so I didn't get into
Oracle. Surprised.
I have not been. So my journey started a lot later than most people. So my journey started when I had a breakdown, and that was 8 or so years ago. Like, that was before that. Spirituality, as much as I saw things or whatever, I put it down as like, no, not real, or I don't want to see spirits from the other side. So I just cut everything out. I'd see orbs and things, and I would just be like, nope, going crazy, and cut it out. So this is why this, and I found Oracle very late. Like, I was like iffing and butting about whether I would even pick up decks and stuff like that. And I picked up this, I think it was even in Big W. Like, I was not even in the spiritual, like, I was like not looking for a deck or anything like that. And this one literally fell off the shelf and I kicked it across the floor. And I was like, Okay.
You really kick it?
I really kicked it. Mac like had to go retrieve it from underneath the thing, and then she's like, "Oh, what's this?" And so I was like, "Oh crap! I think I might have damaged the box. I think I have to buy it."
That's
And
hilarious.
so I brought it home, and I love this deck. I connected with this.
I love
so
it too.
this is the Starseed Oracle, and even at the time, I was like, didn't even know what a Starseed or whatever was. The imagery is beautiful. This is a really great deck for just a single card reading. It's a beautiful. It is a very spiritual deck. It's really about like your path and stuff. But like the imagery is just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And I've pulled a lot from this deck. I've never seen that one before, but because at the time when I first connected with this deck, I didn't connect with it. I didn't know what I was doing. So I would just do a single card reading and read the book and go, okay, I'm very spiritual now. And it kind of
boxes.
The boxes are beautiful, and you can use her boxes are gorgeous. They're great quality, especially for a hay house. And Rebecca Campbell's got like, it's a nice amount of information in the guidebook without being overwhelming. It's not a whole event. It's not complicated. I'm pretty sure there's usually like a question of reflection. Yep, Starseed Soul Inquiry. There's always something to reflect on at the end. See, I have not looked at this deck for a while, and I'm like, maybe I should
revisit it. I'm thinking,
maybe I should revisit it. So, love this deck. Won't part with it. Yeah, love it.
That's the story.
That's the story. Okay. Kicked across
the wall or the room.
Which sounds terrible.
This is my deck, and it is old-ish. How old am I? I'm 41, so I probably got this deck when I was like 15. So pretty old. You can see it is gone through some shit. No. Messages from your angels, and it's a Doreen Virtue, and look, like the box falls apart. It's not. I've retired this deck. You can see the book itself is like all yellowed. So this deck, my very first deck was a tarot deck, and it was the Rider-Waite deck. And I don't know, somewhere along the line, I got rid of that. I don't know where it happened to it, actually. Maybe it's still in Canada. But it was a deck that was a little bit intense for me. I got it when I was 13. I don't know how this deck came into my life. I mean, I bought it, obviously. But I used to have my friends over and do readings for them and read from the book. And that's how I really got started. So the cards themselves all feature angels. They're all stuff like they're just so old. Plasticky. This Omega one was always one of my favorite. It was victory. Your desire is coming to fruition. Keep up the good work. I love that. You know that one? Do you know this deck?
No, I don't know this deck, but I love that it was like, oh, yes. It's always that real affirming, like it's coming, coming.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, the itself, there's like, Archangel Michael, Desiree, like this situation is not for you, but yeah. So it's actually still in pretty good condition, I will say. I don't use this deck anymore. It's past where I'm at now, I guess I could say. Going through it actually makes me feel weird because it's like brings back, right? Where you're like, weird. This is like you're having that kind of moment.
I have a few decks like that I used when I was going through a very hard time. Yeah. And so in a way, those decks kind of
are done.
And it's not that they hold that energy, but it's just that when I see them, that's what I think. And that's part of my past, or that's part of my journey. And I love that. So I do keep those decks for that reason, but they're not a deck that I feel like, oh yes, I'm very connected to you, because I feel like certain decks, especially with oracle decks, because they are very themed and they, a lot of the time they're very specific. I do feel like they come into your life for a specific part of your journey, and then sometimes it's time to move them on. Not move them on as in necessarily off them on, but yeah, move them out. Maybe. What do you do with your older decks? Right.
So I remember I interviewed Paul Fenton Smith on my show on the Afterlight podcast, and you may be listening to this on there. And he was talking about what to do with your old deck, and he burns his.
Wow.
Yeah, because he's a reader and he goes through lots of them because people use his decks a lot and stuff like that. To a certain point, a deck, I feel it's kind of done its work and you retire it, like we talked about. Yeah. And so you can burn your decks if you want. You can give them away. Well, okay, I should refrain. This says what to do with your older deck. I will also say with decks that maybe don't connect with you, you can give them away. I have bought a secondhand deck before in a bookstore. It's like brand new. For me, it's not a big deal at all. Some people say, oh, you have to be gifted a deck. You can't buy your own. That's total crap. You can buy whatever you want for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
You treat yourself is, how I feel about that.
Yeah.
But with these decks, like I've had one deck before where I just looked through it. Oh, actually, no, a couple of them. And I've gone, oh, number one, I keep hearing this person's name in my head. This deck is not for me. It's for them. I just give it to them. Or sometimes there's an element of the deck that I just know I won't connect to and I won't use it. So I'll just give it to someone else. And I've had a couple of cases of that. What about you?
I love my decks. So generally I kind of collect them and I just keep them aside. But there have been ones that I have gifted because I either haven't connected to them or like a client has come in and I've been like, this deck will really help you with your next step. And it's just happened naturally that it's been gifted on. I totally understand that if you are a reader, like if that's your job and you've got a tarot deck or whatever, and that either burning or burying it is probably a great way to go. But when it's part of my journey, I feel like if you're really ready to fully retire a deck and get rid of it, and it's been through a lot of stuff with you, I would bury it personally. I would
but then it's garbage in the world.
Return it to the true. But then otherwise you're burning it and you're just carbon emissions. You're sort of So I don't know. Like I can't.
You just do you at home.
Exactly.
At home. You just
yeah, but I've never actually. I've always either gifted on a deck or just kept them. I was going through a stage where, as I said, I was sort of just buying them all because I felt like I just needed. And I do feel like a lot of the time we do that when we're searching for answers outside of ourselves. I was looking for the answers and I was expecting the decks to give them to me, and they don't give you the answers. They don't. Like, I know they don't. You got to go within. And so when I was avoiding all the work, then I was collecting and buying everything. This is going to fix all my problems. This is going to fix all my problems. But now
I didn't have the right deck. That was the problem the whole
time.
Yeah.
That's it. Damn all these decks. No, but I love to keep them. So, and when the time's right, if it feels right for someone, then I'll just gift it on.
Yeah, perfect. And your newest deck?
Oh, yeah. And so you said, and I realized as well when you said this, that this is technically a tarot. But I have to say, this is a tarot that is read like an oracle because it's a monster. The Unveiling the Golden Age, and it's the visionary experience. And it really is. It's a monster. I have to show you this. So
the box looks amazing.
The box is incredible. It's huge, but look at this.
Wow.
It's, as I said, it's a monster. And like the reason I bring it up in here, it's like even for this card, it says, in traditional tarot, this card signifies conflict, disagreement, and defeat. However, its message and perspective in this deck is wisdom and picking your battles. So this is not It's inspired by tarot, but it's definitely oracle. Gorgeous gold gilding.
Wow.
This is a real starseed deck. Lots of portals, light language,
Wow.
Lumerian.
This isn't an intuitive deck, probably. I mean, you could look at it really get healing from it, I would say, looking
absolutely.
at
Like this, I feel like a lot of them, you know, just the light codes and stuff that she's infused into is beautiful. This is a meaty deck. Of course, this is a journey. This is almost like, like a path. It's like what, 70, it's like a full, I believe, because as you can imagine, I only just got this and I have not. It's like 78 cards. Yeah. So it's like full tarot deck. Full tarot deck. So, I mean, it's going to take you some decent time to get through it. But I do. Beautiful. So Izzy Ivy, this is beautiful. I love her work. I've got her Beyond Lemuria as well. They're the oracle cards, and I love that. My daughter draws, and so we picked up this deck kind of together, and she was really inspired by the imagery and stuff. So I do really love her deck when I'm feeling like I need a little bit of an out of this world kind of more galactic experience. So not something that I've pulled on a lot, but I have done some of the work from this and I'm like, I like it. So if you're looking for a journey, this is a good one.
I love it. I can't wait to look that up more, actually. Next, my newest deck is Resurrection Oracle by Jenna De La Grataglia. She does a lot of the artwork for Colette Baron Reed. It's a big box. It's might be similar to what you have. So you open it up and it's like that. And then you flip it open. And it comes like this. The book itself is full color. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yep. And the deck itself, we've got that beautiful gold blue shimmer. I also got Jenna's deck, the Human Spirit Oracle, which is awesome. I highly recommend it. And who's the Rockpool Publishing? Really high quality card stock on these. Probably like 300 GSM. They're awesome. I love them. The Rockpool's imagery themselves.
Easy to shuffle.
Yes,
I like the shuffling of Rockpool.
Here's just some of the cards to show you. Really beautiful. I think Jenna's just an extraordinarily amazing artist. This one, the printing is a little bit darker than on the Human Spirit, but it works really well for this deck. So there's a bit of those. Yeah, so this is my new deck. So I'm still getting to know it, but I definitely will be using this on a regular basis in my readings for clients and live on Facebook. So the question has to be asked, sister, how many decks is too many?
Well, I would have upwards of 60. So I've definitely slowed down. As I said, and I will be the first to admit, I was searching for something in an oracle deck that was just going to fix everything. It was a diversion for me. It was definitely an avoidance. But now that I can see that, I love having them as that part of my journey to show me, oh my gosh. So now something has to be pretty special for me to want to add it into my
especially because you want to use them too. Like they're art, they're like collectors items, really. And like a lot of the Doreen Virtue decks I have, you can't get anymore because she doesn't produce them. And the one that you were talking about earlier, limited edition stuff. And, so sometimes getting them in that way is very cool. Yes. But they're also meant to be used, I think. It's like looking at a beautiful art piece, but then shoving it in the closet and only looking at it every so often. You're going, what? Don't you want to see it more?
Yeah. And I think so how many oracle decks do you need? Technically one, but I do feel like they're a stone in your journey. So you will, if I can give anyone one piece of advice, it's that buy a deck that you're planning on using and use it when you buy it. So often we're like, oh yeah, I want that deck, and then we put it away and then it never gets used. So if you've brought it into your life, it's supposed to be used, even if it's you end up using it for a week and that's your part of the journey on that. If that's the case, then try and gift it on, because it just feels wasteful. But yeah, they're definitely, technically you need one. But if I could, I do feel like there's probably 3 or 4 that sit, you've seen most of them, that sit as like you definitely need, if you want to read oracles, you definitely need a proper divination kind of deck. And as we said, Colette Baron Reid, perfect for that. You definitely want a specific deck for what you're going through. So if you're feeling isolated into the woods, if you're feeling, you want to connect to the inner, goddess kind of, then you would pick one for that. You're feeling really connected to starseed. So I feel like most people would probably move between comfortably maybe 3 or 4 decks as their kind of like
staples.
Staple ones. Yeah.
Perfect.
But there isn't a too many. Come on.
No. That's a trick question. Well, thank you so much, sister. I've had such a great time. I did leave you a little private chat. I don't know if you had a chance to read it.
No, I was open on a different thing. Hold on.
Oh, that's all right. So I just want to discuss what we're going to do in the next show, because you and I forgot to confirm that. And we had a couple options there, but I just thought I would let you tell us what we're going to do.
Thanks. Put me on the spot. I think we should be practical. Let's go with cleansing and clearing. Let's talk about all of those cleansing, hygiene.
Do you think there are 10 ways that we can? I guess so. I could think of probably.
I think let's go with 10 tips that we have about, and we'll just see where it goes. We'll dive through it. We'll figure it out. We'll nut it out. But I reckon we go around cleansing and clearing, because I think there's a lot that we can cover there, I think there's a lot of gray areas and there's a lot of confusion.
Yeah, that's right. Especially because you do home clearings and property clearings and things like that. That'd be very cool to see if you have some tips around that, making sure that, everything's growing as it should and that sort of thing. So so the next show is going to be 10 tips to clear and cleanse your home and your energy. So that's yourself and your things as well. Candice, how can people get a hold of you if they would like to? You did mention that you are doing home clearings and property clearings. Best way to connect with you?
The best way to connect is via my website, laramalitehealing.com, or via Instagram or Facebook at laramalitehealing. Is definitely just reach out. Everything's on my website, but if you ever have any questions, literally just shoot me a message. It's so much easier than diving through and navigating a website sometimes. I can point you in the right direction. But just reach out, and I would love to connect to anyone and everyone. And please let us know what your favorite oracle decks are, because we always like to add new ones.
Yes, we do. We absolutely do. And it also lets us know what resonated with you as well on our show. We'd love to know whether or not you agreed with some of our thoughts, and or if you disagreed as well, which is always interesting too, because sometimes we look at things in a different way. So I'm Lauren Grace. Thank you so much for being here. And please do join me for Master Your Mindset, a 21-day challenge to a more confident you. Get started for $37 USD. Okay, let's just do it. $37 to change your life. I mean, I don't know, Candice, can you put a price on that?
You can. Absolutely. Too cheap.
Too cheap. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. And we will see you next month. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
I was going to end with our photo, and I will do that right now.